Have you ever wondered how far a country will go to hold on to its past power? France's era of dominance in the Sahel is officially over, but there's one thing about history that's hard to let go of, and that's the grip on the present. Despite being booted out of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, France can't seem to accept its retreat. Now, they're not coming with soldiers, but something far more insidious: spies. And guess what? One of these spies just got caught. This isn't hearsay or a conspiracy. The story was first reported by one of France's own media giants, Leand. If you think this is just talk, think again. But here's what you really want to know. Who was this spy? How did Burkina Faso catch him? And what was he really doing on Burkina soil? Stick with me, because the answers will shock you. The moment of revelation. It all began last month when President Ibrahim Traoré delivered one of his most explosive speeches. Standing before his nation, he accused France of orchestrating covert operations to destabilize not just Burkina Faso, but the entire West African region. With confidence, he called out France's failed anti-terrorism mission, accusing them of shifting their focus from direct intervention to a shadow war within the country. While some dismissed it as fiery rhetoric, now, the truth has emerged, and it's more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. According to French media, a French army corporal, known as Damien L., had been operating under the radar in Burkina Faso for years. His cover? A private security consultant working for an Australian mining company. But this man wasn't just guarding mining assets. He was suspected of something far darker. He was spying for French intelligence. For 2 weeks, Damien L. was held in custody in the capital, Ouagadougou. Investigators are now scrambling to piece together what he was really up to. The big question on everyone's mind: was President Traoré right all along? Was France secretly waging a war from within? Damien L., the spy in plain sight. This arrest wasn't on some distant battlefield. It was in a hotel room in the capital, a place where Damien L. had stayed during his regular one-month rotations to Burkina Faso for the last 4 years. Everything seemed routine, until it wasn't. Authorities discovered something startling during their search of his room. His phones and computer revealed that he wasn't just a harmless security consultant. He was a former French soldier who had been secretly transmitting sensitive information about Burkina Faso's security situation. Now, ask yourself, who was he sending that information to? The answer seems clear: it was going straight to France. This isn't just speculation. It's a pattern. France is still watching, still listening, and still trying to find a way to regain influence in the region. And Damien L. may not even be the only one. There could be many more agents embedded throughout the Sahel, feeding intelligence back to Paris, one encrypted message at a time. A pattern of subversion. But this isn't the first time France has been caught in the act. In April of last year, Burkina Faso expelled 3 French diplomats, accusing them of engaging in subversive activities. The Burkina government gave them 48 hours to leave the country. Subversive. It's a word that demands attention. The dictionary defines it as attempting to undermine the established power or system. These weren't just diplomats sitting in an office sipping coffee. They were allegedly trying to weaken and destabilize the Burkina military government. What were they up to? Were they planting the seeds of division? Or was there a larger scheme at play? The possibilities are chilling. France has a history of using these tactics, spreading disinformation, manipulating narratives, and working to destabilize governments that don't align with their interests. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, here's the kicker. What if those diplomats weren't just trying to destabilize the government? What if they were part of a much bigger operation, trying to set the stage for a coup? After all, France has done this before, and the history of coups in Africa speaks for itself. It's a dangerous game that these diplomats may have been playing, but fortunately for Burkina Faso, they were caught. The French secret agents. Fast forward to December 1, 2023. Burkina Faso made another jaw-dropping move that sent shockwaves across the international community. 4 French officials were arrested, charged with espionage, and imprisoned in Ouagadougou. These weren't just ordinary diplomats fulfilling routine duties. No, they were secret intelligence operatives, exposed and caught red-handed. While France quickly brushed it off, claiming they were merely IT support staff on a routine mission, Burkina Faso wasn't buying the official story. It was the same tired playbook: deny, deflect, and maintain an innocent facade. But this time, Burkina Faso stood firm, refusing to back down. The Burkina government launched an aggressive and thorough investigation into the activities of these men, determined to uncover what they had really been up to in the country. France, as expected, demanded their immediate release. The French diplomatic machine kicked into high gear, using all its influence to push for their freedom. However, the Burkina authorities remained resolute, keeping these agents under house arrest for over 2 long years. This wasn't just a diplomatic spat, it was a stark stand against France's ongoing attempts to manipulate the region. For more than 2 years, these men were held captive while authorities meticulously pieced together their operations. Their involvement in activities far beyond their claimed roles began to surface, and the picture slowly grew clearer. These were not innocent diplomats, but agents embedded deep within Burkina Faso's internal workings. As the months passed, more and more evidence started to emerge, suggesting these agents weren't just there for mundane IT duties. They were involved in much more nefarious operations aimed at destabilizing the country from within. What exactly were they doing in the heart of West Africa, a region with such strategic significance? The full extent of their operations may never be fully understood, but the fact remains that Burkina Faso had taken a bold stand, showing the world that they would no longer tolerate foreign interference in their internal affairs. Despite all the diplomatic pressure from Paris, the Burkina government refused to let go of the investigation. The arrest of these agents wasn't just a small incident. It was a clear signal that Burkina Faso was taking its sovereignty seriously. And when France's attempts to cover up the truth fell short, the world began to see that Burkina Faso was not a puppet of the West. Far from it. They had exposed not just these 4 operatives, but the much larger scheme France had been running across the Sahel. As the investigation continued, it became increasingly clear that France's grip on the region was slipping, and the era of unchecked foreign dominance was finally coming to an end. The shocking truth behind the arrests. Here's where it gets even more disturbing. Investigations uncovered that these men weren't just observing, they were actively helping fuel chaos across Africa. According to reports, they were part of an extensive network of French agents spreading support to rebel groups and jihadist factions. Yes, you heard that right. France was allegedly aiding the very forces responsible for destabilizing the region. Why would France do this? The motive is chillingly clear. By fueling chaos, Paris can maintain a military presence under the guise of fighting terrorism. But in reality, it's a calculated move to secure access to Africa's precious resources: gold, uranium, and lithium, essential materials that power the modern world. Think about that. While the French military has been on the ground for years, fighting the so-called war on terror, the violence has only gotten worse. Is this a coincidence, or is it part of a larger, sinister plan? And if these allegations are true, then the real question becomes, is the war on terror nothing more than a smokescreen for geopolitical control? Mali and the larger geopolitical game. The chilling events unfolding in Mali serve as a stark and unsettling illustration of the complex geopolitical maneuvers that are playing out across Africa. Mali, a country already embroiled in a brutal war against Islamic jihadists and Tuareg rebels, found itself caught in the crossfire of a much larger, high-stakes game. In one of the deadliest assaults by the Tuareg rebels, something unexpected and deeply unsettling came to light. Ukraine's military intelligence openly admitted to providing crucial intelligence to the rebels. The target, however, wasn't Mali or its people, it was Russia. Ukraine, in its pursuit of striking at Russia's mercenary group, Wagner, used Mali as a battleground. The result? A catastrophic loss of life, with 47 Malian soldiers killed in action. What does this revelation signify? It highlights a terrifying truth about how global powers view Africa. If Ukraine, in the name of its political objectives, can openly sacrifice African lives of Malian soldiers, then what lengths are other Western powers, including France, willing to go to in order to pursue their own interests in the region? Mali's tragedy underscores the sobering reality that African nations are often treated as pawns in a much larger geopolitical chess game, one that disregards their sovereignty and the well-being of their people. This is a wake-up call that Africa is no longer a neutral player in global politics. It has become a battleground for competing foreign powers, each seeking to gain influence, resources, or strategic advantage. But what is often overlooked in these power plays is the human cost. It's easy for Western powers to make decisions thousands of miles away, but it is the African people who are left to bear the consequences. What has become increasingly clear is that Africa's struggles are not just about local insurgencies or terrorism, but about larger international forces using the continent for their own geopolitical ends. This manipulation and exploitation are not new, but the scale of the sacrifice is becoming increasingly obvious. African nations are being drawn into global power struggles they never asked for, and their people are suffering the consequences. As Western powers like France and others engage in covert and overt operations in the Sahel, the true cost of these games is being paid in blood, with African soldiers and civilians as the ones who pay the highest price. The question we must all ask: how long will this continue, and who will stand up for the African nations caught in the middle of this deadly geopolitical game? Burkina Faso's fight for sovereignty. Amid all the chaos and external pressures, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has found himself fighting a war on two fronts, battling the ongoing threat of terrorism in the Sahel and pushing back against a powerful narrative that seeks to discredit his leadership. Western media outlets have persistently painted a grim picture of Burkina Faso, claiming that insecurity has risen since French forces pulled out. This narrative suggests that Burkina Faso is teetering on the edge of collapse, with instability escalating in the wake of foreign intervention's withdrawal. But what they fail to mention is the significant progress the Burkina military has made on the ground. Contrary to what's being reported, towns once held hostage by terrorist factions are being reclaimed by the Burkina army. Communities that had lived in constant fear are now returning to their homes. These victories may not be making headlines, but they're telling a very different story from the one pushed by Western media. The reason these successes aren't front-page news? Acknowledging Traoré's achievements would shatter the long-standing narrative that only French intervention could bring stability to the region. The West needs that narrative in place to maintain influence in the Sahel, so anything that challenges it is downplayed or ignored. But here's the undeniable truth. In just 1 year, the Burkina military has done more to reclaim territory and restore peace than it did in a decade of foreign military presence. Under French protection, the situation only worsened, with foreign forces failing to curb the spread of terror. Captain Traoré has been open about why the old system failed. The soldiers were never equipped for success. They lacked weapons, proper training, and even the basic supplies needed to fight a modern war. 4 years, the military had been undermined by neglect and corruption. But Traoré, determined to turn the tide, has started rebuilding his forces from the ground up, addressing the gaps left by foreign influence. Instead of relying on Western powers, Traoré has turned to new, more reliable allies who respect Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Nations like Russia, Rwanda, and Mali have become key partners in his efforts to modernize the Burkina military. He is not only securing new weapons and supplies but also fostering a sense of pride and independence within his ranks. Traoré understands that victory isn't just about weaponry. It's about morale, cohesion, and reclaiming the sense of national pride that was stripped away under foreign control. In stark contrast to the narrative pushed by Western media, Captain Traoré is leading a revolution, not just against terrorists, but against the idea that African nations can't solve their own problems without outside interference. He's rebuilding a self-reliant military capable of defending its own people, without needing to rely on foreign powers that have historically treated Africa as a resource to be exploited, not as a partner in a global community. This shift in Burkina Faso's military strategy and international alliances is a testament to the nation's fight for true sovereignty, one that will not be dictated by outside forces, but determined by its people. If this model spreads across the Sahel, the days of Western influence in Africa may be numbered. Traoré's leadership represents more than just a battle for land or security. It is a battle for the very identity of Burkina Faso as a sovereign nation that stands on its own 2 feet. With each victory on the battlefield, the message becomes clearer. Burkina Faso is not a pawn in someone else's geopolitical game. It is a country taking control of its own future. A bold new future. Burkina Faso is charting a bold new course, one that is reshaping its military capabilities and defying the historical reliance on Western powers for defense. No longer content to be a client state or a pawn in foreign geopolitical games, the country has embarked on a strategic rearmament effort, securing a game-changing arsenal from China. This includes advanced armored vehicles, heavy artillery, and other cutting-edge military equipment that will strengthen Burkina Faso's ability to defend its sovereignty. With these new resources, the country is no longer dependent on foreign aid or Western military support. Instead, it is taking its future into its own hands, building a self-reliant and powerful military that reflects its newfound independence. This shift in military strategy is just the beginning of a broader transformation for Burkina Faso. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, the country is not only rearming its forces but is also redefining what it means to be a sovereign nation in the 21st century. Traoré's vision is clear. Burkina Faso will no longer be dictated to by external forces, especially those that have historically used the region for their own interests. The message to the world is undeniable. Burkina Faso is stepping into its own power, taking control of its destiny, and rejecting the influence of foreign powers that have long shaped its fate. What's even more significant is the ripple effect this may have across the continent. Burkina Faso's bold move to strengthen its military without relying on Western nations could serve as an inspiration to other African countries, showing them that it's possible to secure arms and build a defense strategy without falling into the trap of foreign dependency. If other nations follow Burkina Faso's lead, it could signal a seismic shift in Africa's geopolitical landscape. The West's grip on the Sahel and other regions could finally begin to slip, as African nations assert their sovereignty and reject the exploitation and manipulation that has characterized colonial and post-colonial relationships. The Sahel, long seen as a region of instability and foreign intervention, may be on the brink of rewriting its own narrative. By embracing self-reliance and strengthening local alliances, Africa could forge a future where its nations control their own destiny, free from the chains of external dominance. Burkina Faso's rearmament strategy is more than just a military buildup. It's a bold declaration that Africa's time for autonomy and leadership on the global stage has come. And if this movement takes hold across the continent, the future of Africa may be one where its nations no longer look to the West for guidance, but lead the world with their own vision for peace, prosperity, and sovereignty. The Sahel's future. The question now is no longer whether Burkina Faso will succeed, but rather how many other African nations will rise up and join this revolution for sovereignty and self-determination. Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is proving that African nations can stand on their own, free from the shackles of foreign intervention. The rest of the continent is watching closely as the country makes strides in rebuilding its military strength and forging new alliances that respect its autonomy. As Burkina Faso continues to assert itself, other nations may begin to follow suit, realizing that they, too, can take control of their destinies without relying on former colonial powers like France. For France, the situation is clear. Its old methods of manipulation, control, and interference are no longer working. The days of wielding influence over the Sahel through military presence and covert operations are fading fast. Africa is beginning to play by its own rules, and the West is struggling to adapt to a new reality where African nations assert their sovereignty and demand respect. The power dynamics in the region are shifting, and countries that once were forced into dependence on Western powers are now finding the courage to chart their own paths. But one thing is certain: the battle for the Sahel is far from over. While Burkina Faso's actions may signal the dawn of a new era, there are still significant challenges ahead. The region remains a battleground for not only local insurgencies but also for global powers who are unwilling to let go of their influence. France and other Western nations will likely continue to resist this shift, using every tool at their disposal to try to reclaim control. The Sahel is caught in a tense struggle between the forces of external intervention and the rising wave of African independence. As the winds of change blow through the region, African nations will need to remain united and steadfast in their pursuit of sovereignty. The coming years will be crucial in determining whether this new movement for independence and self-reliance can withstand the pushback from old powers. What is clear is that the Sahel is entering a new chapter, and the future of the region is no longer solely in the hands of foreign powers. It is now in the hands of the African people themselves. The battle is far from over, but the first steps toward reclaiming the Sahel's future have already been taken.